Welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really happy to be here to talk about some of the, there's kind of two things happening at once. We have like an aftermath of all the energies of the full moon we had in February, that Virgo full moon, the solar flares. And now we're in the energy of March and we're in a new reality. We've got a bigger split of 3D, 5D happening. And moving through all of that is a lot. It is a lot of energy. And at the same time, we're still moving very fast, but we need to rest. And how do we do that? And how do we make peace with all of that that's happening in new energies? So that's what we're talking about. So welcome to the show, ladies. How are you feeling? March 1st?
Good. I think that the rest and like recalibrating energy is super, super important for this month in particular. Because as we were talking about before we even pressed record, was that even though it's time to rest, doesn't mean that the world around you or the energy influx around us is going to stop, right? So it's how to recalibrate, rest, and recover during times of movement and transition, and rebuilding old structures and recalibrating our energy and our frequency, and like rebuilding the life in which we're like kind of moving towards, and also resting, recovering, and recalibrating our energy as we go, because it's important. It's like running a marathon, but you can't just like boom the whole time. You have to integrate into the marathon times that you can recalibrate and you can kind of take a moment to readjust and then keep going. And you have to calculate for those times, right? Those aren't going to be your big minutes where you're making up time. Like those are the recalibration times. And if you don't kind of allow yourself to integrate those times and really give yourself full permission to have those a part of the marathon, then the chances of finishing in the way that feels good decreases, right? Like there's risk of injury, there's of all the things in our in this analogy. But so we're talking about like how to integrate these times of recalibration and rest in order to take care of self so that you can continue on this very, I would like to say, fast-paced energy movement of March. So it's important. It's important for your mental health, physical health, spiritual health, all of it, to be able to give yourself times of rest and recalibration. But what does that look like? What does that look like? How do you do it?
Well, and I feel like too, before we go into that, it's important to remember, and like I am so guilty of doing this. Maybe guilty is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. That like good things still draw on our system. So even if it's like life feels good and it's high vibe and you're in alignment and blah, blah, and you're, but you're still moving quickly and you're doing a lot of things, and a weekend full of like friends and family and loved ones and like something that brings you a lot of joy can still really deplete your energy. So it's not to say like, oh, only rest if it feels like it's hard or you're kind of, it's fast but challenging. It's like, no, even when it's fast but exciting and good and lovely and joyful, that still requires us to pause and recharge.
Yeah, you still sleep after a good day, right?
Totally.
Yeah, you do.
Totally.
That's something I really have had to learn over the years, is even good stuff can be draining to my body energy, my life force energy. And this year I've been working really hard at implementing rest times in every day, like scheduling time pretty much where I can put everything down and I have 45 minutes here or 20 minutes here or an hour here of nothing but rest. And in that rest time, I can do some stretching. I could do a gentle workout if I'm feeling energetic. Mind rest is needed. Or maybe I read a book for a bit, or like, it has helped me so much this year to try and balance out the body's expenditure within all of the change, within supporting higher consciousness and awakened consciousness, all of that, while still trying to be human too, right? Like we're all doing, right? Putting in those times of rest has been a game changer for me. Huge. And sometimes I need more of it. And sometimes I can go on with a little bit less, but like giving it the equal part value to, like, it's as important to me as brushing my teeth, right? Like it is required every day. And changing that has been so big, so big. It's like a gift.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
you know,
tuning into what that looks like, because that's not always a salt bath, right? Like you're saying, it could be a workout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, even I've noticed like how that has kind of flowed into other aspects of my life. I now, when I make my coffee, and we love coffee, we talk a lot about coffee and we drink a lot of coffee.
Coffee talk.
When I make my coffee, it's even become this like really short but ceremonial ritualistic thing. There's something that happens every time, especially when I use the French press and I pour it in and I like mix everything together. The pouring of it in, when I do it, I can't help but I set intentions of like something, or maybe just gratitude. It has joined into my coffee, which makes my coffee even that much better. So like,
it's like blessing of the water, blessing of the food. It's same,
it
yeah.
totally is. And that rest
that.
time is what has allowed me to start implementing those moments in other moments, which I wouldn't have expected. I didn't know that would be kind of like a ripple effect of it, but it's been really beneficial.
Yeah. I think
like
another
even
thing, you go.
Yeah, I'll, mine's on Ginette. Another thing with that is that when we're intentional about something, then our brain starts to look for it more. So to speak to what you just said, it's like, if I'm intentionally doing this thing, I'm inherently, my brain is going to start to be like, okay, where am I seeing this in other areas of life? So it's like, it builds on itself, which is wonderful. You go, Lisa.
I think another thing that I just keep hearing over and over in my ear is that a really self-honoring practice, and I know we've talked about this before, but they just keep, so there's obviously a message in this for someone. A self-honoring practice is tuning in to where you're at that point in time and decide whether or not things are yes or no. So when we are, even if it's like derived from your why and it's for the greater good, you still have to ask yourself, if somebody asks something of you or of your time, does this serve me right now? Because it's okay to say no, even if you're saying no to doing something that is of service. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially because if you then say yes, because you're like, okay, for the greater good, but you know deep inside that it's actually not serving you, it's taking from your cup, then it's actually not of the greatest service for yourself or others. It's really not. And that is then the energy that is subconsciously interwoven in that interaction. And so to really be of service to yourself is the number one most important in order to be of service for the greater good, right? And when we're doing this work, a lot of it is derived from that concept of for the greater good, right? Really. And if we are not really tuning into ourselves and what is of service to us first and foremost, then it doesn't have the same ripple effect for the greater good. So saying no when you need to recalibrate, saying no without having to justify either for yourself or for the other person why you're saying no, you know when it's a no. You know when it's a no, and it's okay. And the more that we stand behind that validation of self, the more it gives full permission for the collective to do the same thing, so that when we are going through interactions in our life and we see that somebody is honoring themselves by saying no to something, we can internally like validate ourselves and them, and it's this like opening of receptivity for all people to be able to work in their authentic energy then, right? We're not being depleted, and we're not working off of our perception of other people's perception of us, our worthiness, our whatever. That is kind of like the compensatory strategy. Do you know what I mean? So the big message, overlying message in this is, when it's time to recalibrate and rest, maybe that looks like your internal guidance system saying, this doesn't serve me right now. And I have to say no.
Yeah. I have the three guides of the light wanting to come through. So I'm just going to bring them through too, to follow on that. Cause they're like, you could hear them being like, yes, yes, yes. And it's like getting louder and louder. So there's something to follow in that. So just hold on one sec. We are the three guides of the light, and we're grateful to be able to come through at this time. We wish most specifically to share a message for all of you that you are changing your energetics in your sovereign selves. And what that means for all of you that are choosing a path of higher awakening, higher consciousness, and open-mindedness is that this is allowing you to change the energetic structure of your species. What you don't realize is that this moment in time now is a critical juncture point in the change of what you call trajectory. You're moving in a direction now that is allowing you to adhere to higher levels of energetic frequential standards, much of which you do not fully understand at this time. But this is allowing you entry into a new galactic level of consciousness and interaction. And within this, and within these moments of both rest and action, you will find that the spirit world will be able to come in much more closely to interact with you. This is all because of this different dimensional consciousness that resides within you now. This consciousness is not something that can be pushed on you, but rather something that has to be opened from within with a willing and open heart. Something that each and every one of you must meet and come face to face with in your own divine time. The wonderful thing is that the timing now is that many of you have awakened to this as a group collective. And it is this group collective that many of you show as stepping into this. Hold on. They're trying to show me things at the same time, which is why it started to slip away. I think they're flipping into mediumship. Yeah, because they're wanting to show me now. It's so funny when that happens. They're wanting to show me now that we've been talking about these branches, like we talked about last week, these branches and these changes. And they're saying it's the fact that so many people, although it might not seem like it on certain levels, so many people are stepping into that awakened thinking, that it's that branch that we're now in, that 5D, that is really allowing us to step into this sovereign aspect of self, which is so much bigger than we realize. Like we are now, it's like getting out of one pool and we're now swimming in a completely different pool that has such different energies. We don't even understand the magnitude of what we actually reside in now. And that's because of this collective shift. So they're like excited, which is why they were like happy with what you were saying, Elyse, and like, yes, and yes, and yes, because we don't realize that we're now really swimming in an entirely new pool and we're just getting to feel the water temperature, but we don't realize there's so much more beyond the water temperature. There's like different creatures and different energies, and we can actually breathe underwater again, metaphorically speaking. But it's all because we've been willing to become sovereign, willing to set boundary points and standards and yeses and nos and honor the rest, honor the action, all of that. They're like, you, again, they're saying you don't realize how significant of a leap that has happened and is currently happening. It is what they have essentially hoped for and envisioned for us. And we have enough of a majority, so to speak, to allow it to carve its own individual reality. I think that's it. Hold on. Lastly, they're saying your capabilities now, especially, so they were saying like in connection to spirit communication, there's going to be more of that is possible. But they're saying your capabilities now are going to feel like they're doubling, over the next year in either the output you can create, maybe it's just physical output, maybe it's your ability to heal, maybe it's your intellectual, like putting together things to create something that makes sense. Maybe it's whatever it is, they're showing it to me. They're like, it's like equal to if you only ever breathed out of one lung before, and that's what you thought was normal, but now you have a set of lungs, your output and your abilities are doubled. And so you can hike farther and run faster and all of that kind of stuff.
Love that.
We are doubling in one sense. They're like, it's the best way we can explain it to you. They're like, you do not understand the
Right.
pool you have stepped into, but it
Right.
is so exciting.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Hey, because like when I know we've all like experienced the visions of what the fifth dimensional frequency looks like and feels like, right? And it's like so different. And you kind of, from the perspective in which we were at, we're like, well, how in the heck do we even get there? How do we get there with the current, like, financial, whatever, the government thing, the land, the cost, the blah, 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 right? How? And they're just like, just keep developing self, keep developing spirit, keep developing your like sovereignty, essentially. Like your authentic self. That authenticity is just like over and over and over and over, because when you illuminate that from its like perspective of like what we came in with, our actual self, right? That's when, and we connect with the frequency of this higher vibration. They're like, just wait. Like,
Yeah.
You can't comprehend the how when you're in that other frequency because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I know. And I think 2024 is such a year of developing this, right? Because like any kind of, I love that in your podcast too, Ginette, you're talking about why am I going without the word? Like forecasting, premonition, like
Yeah.
that.
Prophecy, premonition.
Yeah. So when anything that I've listened to from individuals in which I resonate with, right, when what they're speaking resonates, and they talk about premonitions or prophecies that they've experienced about the fifth dimensional frequency world and how different it is. And certainly not everybody on earth chooses to go down that path. They say it's like really showing up in 2025 and 2026 is when we actually start to really experience it. Therefore, 2024 being that like gap year, that like bridge year, right? 2020 to 2023 is that like whole like stop growth, like tower. And then 2025, 2026-ish, to being able to start getting comfortable in our new frequency. And so this is such a bridge year of developing that sense of authentic self that the three guides were talking about. And it's like, once you start using both lungs, you're going to start seeing how now you can understand how that is occurring because you couldn't before. And this year of 2024 is that bridge. And that's why it's so fast paced. That's why we are coming into contact with things that we didn't even believe was possible before. But with this, and we're doing it, and we're receiving it, and we're integrating it, and we're healing, it is important for that rest and that recalibration and integration of self.
Yeah.
How about you, Elyse?
Well, yes to everything. And I also am getting this feeling of wanting to just talk about especially when we're talking about rest or when we're talking about sovereignty or whatever, kind of all of that. And Lisa, you were speaking to like the yes and the no's and knowing when we need to tap into which. But this idea of sometimes when we start to do that really authentically, life around us doesn't always honor it the way we would like. And so that can result in pushback, that can result in people's expectations, that can result in our perception of what they're perceiving or expecting of us. Yeah. There can be guilt, there can be shame, there can be hard feelings around that, feeling like who am I to say yes or to say no to something? And, we talked about it last week, but it's, an invitation into those pieces coming up. And, you know, for me, I often joke, I was just having a conversation with a loved one about this, like just this week, and her being given this opportunity that was really a really beautiful gift, but it creating a really strong sense of like, I don't know if I can do this. And I don't know if this is right for me. And I don't know if I want to accept this gift right now. And the way that the brain can have all sorts of things to say about what you should or shouldn't do, and how that will impact other people. And I'm, you know, we're not talking in the sense of like harming others, but when it's like, I just don't have capacity for this right now. I would love to show up and help, or I would love to, you know, do this thing or go to this place or whatever that looks like. But I also know that my adrenals, my anxiety, my reservoir is really low. And the ripple effect of that is going to become more challenging. It can be hard to say no, and it can bring up a lot of things. And so, all to say, if you're noticing that, for me, you know, I think I've gotten pretty good. And honestly, I think because of experiencing chronic illness, I kind of had to get okay with saying no and feeling like I was letting people down. Like when I would be in a really extreme endo flare a few years ago, it was like, you're not getting me off the couch. It's just not going to happen. And I would feel bad because I would have to just fully say, like, I can't come. I can't do this thing. I can't help you out. I'm sorry. And I felt a lot of guilt because I felt like I wasn't showing up. I wasn't living life in a way that I wanted to. But at that time, I had to honor that, like, my body was going through it and I did not have the space or capacity or even like the mental clarity to go and drive or go and do something. And so for me now, I think I'm in a bit of an easier place with it, but it came up a lot. And I think it comes up a lot for us, especially when we're used to being people that want to show up and want to do the things and want to live this really full, big, beautiful life. And it's not to say you can't come back to that and you won't come back to that, but it's when you're in a space where that's just not possible, knowing that that's okay, knowing that that still means you love people, you can communicate that to them. But also like really deeply honoring what you need, right? It's that old adage, if you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think we, in this fast-paced world, that can very easily fall out of mind. And as things seem to be wanting to ramp up more and more and more, that discernment, like you were saying, Lisa, of like, what is a yes for me and what is a no for me is going to become even more important. And if there's ick feelings that come up with that yes or no, honoring that too. That's probably part of the invitation in slowing down.
Totally.
Yeah.
If there's ick feelings around the yes or the no, then again, like that's what we were talking about last week, is that that's an opportunity for you to take a look at where that ick feel. It's not the situation at hand necessarily that it's to take a look at. It's the ick feeling without judgment, being like, oh, okay, there is something there still. Hey, let's take a look at that. Let's lean into that a bit. And there's aspect of self that needs to be validated, or whatever she or he might need. Right?
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, any other thoughts?
That was good, especially because we showed up this week and we're like, so
Right.
it kind of felt
What are we
quiet,
talking
and then all of
about?
a sudden it's like there's a channel, there's mediumship, there's so much here. There's so much here. Lots of
Yeah.
good tidbits here. And
And we didn't really.
Spirit.
Oh, sorry. Go
I
ahead.
love how Spirit is like very encouraging for us to continue to show up every week and just start talking. They're like, you never have to worry because we're always going to lead with what needs to be heard.
Mhm.
And I really truly believe that is that when you're working in the light, which I believe that we're all doing, that's involved in this community, that when you're working in the light and your why is there, it might not always be easy, right? It might not always be easy, but you are being guided by a team that is for your greatest good. And when you can really trust that the universe has your back, even when you don't know what the heck to do, you can trust going forward. Right?
Yeah, it's true.
I was just going to say, we didn't talk much about like what we do to rest or, you know, what that looks like, but we have had past episodes of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we need to, because if you're like, well, what do you guys do? Especially if you haven't watched those past episodes, go back. We got a bajillion episodes, but go back and look at some of the self-care ones, some of the rest ones, because this has been an ongoing theme that kind of pops up over the last 4 years. And And yeah, we've talked lots about different ways in which you can honor what rest and self-care looks like for you.
Definitely. And I think that's why this week it was very much the message of it's a kind of continuous motion forward energy. And so one of the best ways to be able to do the self-care is being able to be really decisive about your time. And choosing what is in service for yourself first and foremost. And that's probably going to help the big picture of it right now, because that's the big energy behind it. That's the kind of message. What do you got, Ginette?
No, that's it. That's all I got. Perfect. That's perfect.
That's like me last week.
That's the message.
That's your message. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and spending your time. Hopefully you had a coffee or a tea and took some rest while listening. And we wish you a beautiful entry into the fast-paced energy of March. And we'll be back again next week with more insights and things to share. So have a beautiful rest of your day. Share, subscribe, and like. And we'll see you next time.